Have you ever watched someone you care about suddenly vanish into thin air, not physically, but emotionally, leaving behind only silence and confusion? Picture this scenario. Everything seems perfectly fine, perhaps even wonderful, and then, without warning, they retreat like a startled animal into an invisible fortress. This phenomenon reveals the secret logic behind avoidant withdrawal, a pattern so predictable yet so misunderstood that it continues to baffle even the most emotionally intelligent among us. The human mind, you see, operates much like an ancient castle with hidden passages and secret chambers. When someone with an avoidant attachment style feels threatened, they activate these hidden escape routes with the precision of a master magician. But here's what most people fail to grasp. This withdrawal isn't random chaos or deliberate cruelty. There's a sophisticated internal system at work, complete with warning signals, defense mechanisms, and survival protocols that have been carefully constructed over years of experience. Understanding this secret logic changes everything. Instead of feeling rejected, abandoned, or confused when someone pulls away, you begin to see the intricate clockwork of their emotional world. You start recognizing the subtle signs that precede withdrawal, the specific triggers that activate their defense systems, and most importantly, the underlying fears that drive their seemingly irrational behavior. This knowledge transforms relationships from mysterious puzzles into comprehensible patterns. When you understand why someone withdraws, you can respond with wisdom rather than desperation, with patience rather than pursuit, and with strategy rather than emotion. The secret logic, once revealed, becomes a roadmap for navigating the complex terrain of human connection with someone who has learned that distance equals safety. But the story goes deeper than simple understanding. This withdrawal pattern affects millions of relationships, creating cycles of pursuit and retreat that can last for years. The avoidant person isn't trying to hurt anyone. They're trying to protect themselves using the only system they know works. Their logic makes perfect sense once you understand their internal programming, and that understanding becomes the key to breaking these destructive cycles. If you want to better understand someone's attachment style, see the link in the description to one of the most popular books on attachment theory. Now, let's explore this through the lens of human behavior, because the most profound truths often reveal themselves through the stories we live every day. Consider the tale of someone we'll call Marcus, a successful architect who possessed the remarkable ability to design beautiful spaces for others while simultaneously creating emotional wastelands in his own relationships. Marcus had perfected the art of what psychologists call the Phantom X phenomenon, where he would unconsciously compare every new romantic interest to an imaginary perfect partner who existed only in his mind. The story begins when Marcus met Rebecca at a mutual friend's gallery opening. Their connection was immediate and electric, filled with engaging conversations about art, travel, and shared dreams of creating something meaningful in the world. For 6 weeks, their relationship bloomed with the intensity of spring after a harsh winter. Rebecca felt like she had finally found someone who understood her creative soul, someone who could match her intellectual curiosity and emotional depth. But then something shifted, subtle at first, like shadows growing longer as the sun sets. Marcus began responding to messages hours later instead of minutes. His weekend plans became mysteriously busy with work projects that hadn't existed the week before. When Rebecca suggested meeting his close friends, he agreed enthusiastically, but somehow never followed through with actual introductions. Here's where the secret logic reveals itself. Marcus's mind had triggered what researchers call the deactivating strategy. His attachment system detected growing emotional intimacy as a potential threat to his autonomy and safety. Without conscious awareness, his brain began implementing withdrawal protocols designed to create distance and reduce vulnerability. The fascinating part is how Marcus rationalized this behavior to himself. He convinced himself that Rebecca was becoming too clingy, even though her behavior hadn't changed at all. This demonstrates a cognitive bias called the fundamental attribution error, where people attribute their discomfort to external factors rather than their own internal processes. Marcus genuinely believed that Rebecca's normal relationship expectations were excessive demands. Rebecca, meanwhile, found herself caught in an emotional maze with no clear exit. She could sense the growing distance but couldn't identify any specific reason for the change. Like Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl trying to solve a social mystery, Rebecca analyzed every interaction, searching for clues about what had gone wrong. The harder she looked for answers, the more Marcus felt pressured to provide explanations he didn't fully understand himself. But here's the twist that reveals the true complexity of avoidant withdrawal. Marcus wasn't losing interest in Rebecca. In fact, he was falling in love with her, and that terrified him more than any physical danger ever could. His withdrawal wasn't about rejection, it was about self-preservation in the face of overwhelming emotional intensity. The climax of their story came during a dinner conversation when Rebecca, frustrated by weeks of mixed signals, directly asked Marcus about their future together. In that moment, Marcus felt like a cornered animal, his nervous system flooded with the same fight-or-flight chemicals that his ancestors experienced when facing predators. His response was swift and devastating. He told Rebecca that he wasn't ready for anything serious and needed space to figure things out. What Rebecca couldn't see was the internal war raging in Marcus's mind. Part of him wanted to pull her closer, to share his dreams and fears, to build something beautiful together. But another part, the part programmed by years of early experiences, viewed emotional intimacy as dangerous territory where people get hurt and dreams get shattered. The resolution came weeks later when Marcus realized that his withdrawal had cost him the very thing he valued most. But by then, Rebecca had already begun protecting her own heart, creating her own distance as a shield against further pain. This story illuminates a crucial truth about avoidant withdrawal. It's not personal, even when it feels devastatingly personal. The secret logic operates independently of the actual relationship quality or the other person's worthiness of love. Understanding this pattern requires recognizing that avoidant individuals often experience what psychologists call emotional dysregulation during moments of increasing intimacy. Their nervous system literally cannot distinguish between emotional vulnerability and physical danger, triggering the same protective responses that kept their ancestors alive in hostile environments. Now, let's translate this understanding into practical wisdom that can transform how you navigate these challenging dynamics. The first essential principle involves recognizing the early warning signs before withdrawal begins. Avoidant individuals rarely announce their discomfort directly. Instead, they communicate through subtle changes in behavior patterns. Watch for decreased enthusiasm in conversations, longer response times to messages, sudden increases in work or social commitments, and a general shift from we language to I language when discussing future plans. Think of these signs like weather patterns before a storm. Meteorologists don't wait for lightning to predict severe weather. They observe atmospheric pressure, wind direction, and temperature changes hours in advance. Similarly, emotional withdrawal follows predictable patterns that become visible once you know what to look for. The key is responding to these early signals with curiosity rather than panic. When you notice someone becoming more distant, resist the natural urge to move closer or demand explanations. Instead, create what relationship experts call comfortable space, maintaining your own emotional stability while giving them room to process their internal experience without pressure. Here's a practical approach. When someone starts withdrawing, acknowledge the change without making it about yourself. Instead of saying, "Why are you pulling away from me?" Try something like, "I've noticed you seem to need some extra space lately, and that's okay." This response demonstrates understanding rather than accusation, which can actually prevent deeper withdrawal. The second crucial strategy involves understanding the power of what psychologists call secure base behavior. Just as Joe Goldberg from the Netflix series You becomes obsessive when his attachment system activates, people with avoidant styles become distant when theirs does the same. But unlike Joe's unhealthy pursuit, you can provide stability by becoming a consistent, non-threatening presence in their life. Secure base behavior means being reliably available without being overwhelming, supportive without being intrusive, and caring without being possessive. Think of yourself as a lighthouse rather than a rescue boat. Lighthouses don't chase ships in distress. They maintain a steady, guiding presence that ships can navigate toward when they're ready. This approach requires exceptional emotional self-regulation on your part. When someone withdraws, every instinct screams to pursue, to fix, to demand connection. But pursuing an avoidant person during withdrawal is like chasing a cat. The faster you move toward them, the faster they run away. Instead, maintain your own emotional equilibrium and trust that consistency over time builds safety. The third principle focuses on communication strategies that actually work with avoidant individuals. Direct emotional conversations often trigger their withdrawal reflexes, but indirect approaches can be remarkably effective. Instead of asking, "How are you feeling about us?" try sharing your own experience without requiring a response. "I've been thinking about how much I enjoy our conversations about architecture." This indirect approach allows them to engage emotionally without feeling trapped or pressured to perform vulnerability on demand. Remember, avoidant individuals want connection just as much as anyone else. They simply need different pathways to access it safely. Consider how Emily Cooper from Emily in Paris navigates cultural differences by adapting her communication style to different social contexts. Similarly, communicating with avoidant individuals requires cultural sensitivity to their emotional world, where direct confrontation feels threatening but gentle, patient presence feels safe. The fourth strategy involves managing your own attachment system during their withdrawal periods. When someone pulls away, your brain may interpret this as abandonment, triggering your own fight-or-flight responses. You might find yourself obsessively checking your phone, analyzing their social media activity, or creating stories about what their distance means. Combat this by developing what researchers call mentalization, the ability to understand behavior in terms of underlying mental states. When someone withdraws, practice thinking, "They're feeling overwhelmed by intimacy," instead of, "They don't care about me anymore." This shift in perspective prevents your own attachment system from spiraling into panic mode. The fifth and perhaps most important principle involves recognizing when withdrawal becomes harmful to your own well-being. Understanding avoidant behavior doesn't mean accepting treatment that damages your emotional health. There's a crucial difference between giving someone space to process their feelings and allowing yourself to be emotionally neglected or manipulated. Set clear boundaries about what kinds of communication and behavior you need to feel secure in the relationship. Express these needs calmly and clearly, without ultimatums or threats. Remember, you're not trying to change them. You're creating conditions where both of you can feel safe and respected. Like Serena van der Woodsen from Gossip Girl learning to balance her free spirit with commitment, you can learn to balance understanding with self-respect, patience with personal needs, and compassion with healthy boundaries. The final strategy involves recognizing the slow, gradual nature of building trust with avoidant individuals. Unlike romantic movies where grand gestures win hearts overnight, real progress with avoidant attachment happens through countless small moments of safety and consistency. Each time you respond to their withdrawal with understanding rather than pursuit, you make a deposit in their emotional trust account. This process requires what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to sit with uncomfortable emotions without immediately trying to fix or change them. When someone withdraws, you'll feel anxious, confused, maybe even rejected. These feelings are normal and valid, but acting on them impulsively usually makes things worse. Instead, develop practices that help you regulate your own emotions during difficult times. This might include journaling, talking with trusted friends, engaging in physical exercise, or practicing mindfulness meditation. The goal is maintaining your emotional stability so you can respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. Understanding the secret logic behind avoidant withdrawal transforms you from a confused participant into a wise observer of human behavior. You begin to see withdrawal not as rejection but as self-protection, not as indifference but as overwhelming care that feels too dangerous to express directly. This knowledge carries profound implications for every relationship in your life. When your colleague becomes distant before big presentations, when your friend cancels plans repeatedly during stressful periods, when romantic partners retreat after moments of deep connection, you can respond with wisdom instead of taking their behavior personally. The secret logic reveals that withdrawal often occurs precisely when people care the most, when the stakes feel highest, when vulnerability seems most dangerous. This paradox, that people pull away from what they want most, represents one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking aspects of human nature. Remember that changing attachment patterns takes time, patience, and often professional support. Your role isn't to fix anyone or force them to love differently. Your role is to understand their internal world well enough to respond with compassion rather than confusion, with strategy rather than desperation. The people in your life who struggle with avoidant withdrawal aren't broken or damaged. They're using survival strategies that once protected them but may no longer serve their adult relationships. With understanding, patience, and appropriate boundaries, you can create the kind of safe emotional environment where those protective walls can slowly, carefully come down. Take action on this knowledge by observing patterns in your own relationships with new eyes. Notice when people withdraw and practice responding with curious compassion rather than anxious pursuit. Build your own emotional regulation skills so you can remain stable when others become dysregulated. Most importantly, remember that understanding someone's behavior doesn't require accepting treatment that harms your well-being. The secret logic behind avoidant withdrawal, once understood, becomes a gift. The gift of seeing past surface behaviors to the tender human hearts hiding underneath protective armor. In that seeing, in that understanding, lies the possibility for deeper connection than most people ever experience. The fortress walls that seem so impenetrable are actually carefully constructed bridges, waiting for someone wise enough to cross them at exactly the right pace, with exactly the right respect for their purpose and their beauty.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.